So just to provide some clarification on what we're talking about here tonight, back in November, I mailed all of the taxpayers the fact that I'm opposed to the 18% tax increase. And I want to provide some clarification on why. It's not necessarily the reason that I'm opposed to spending a few $100s more on my taxes, but rather the fact that we're working with a broken model. So, Mr. Baker, when you talk about all of the metrics that you use, that the city is in the top 3% or the top 10 of this or that, understand that the state of Michigan is broken. We're the number one state in the country in unemployment. We're the number one state in loss of our most valuable resource for the future, which is young college graduates. So when we talk about where we're at today, talking about a tax increase, understand that we're in a broken system. So we can look at some models right now. State of Michigan last year, or 2 years ago, increased taxes on income as well as on individuals and businesses. We can fast forward to this year and see that they're running a $2.8 billion budget deficit. They didn't address the problem. They've got a structural issue. Macomb County raised their property taxes last year. We can, again, look forward to 2009, 2010, and they're running a $20 to $30 million budget deficit. Again, they have the same problem. They haven't fixed their structural problem. Sterling Heights today is going to increase property taxes 18%. We haven't fixed the problem. Governments, city governments, county governments, they operate under certain assumptions. Those assumptions are that property values, tax revenue always increases because property values always increase. And if that doesn't happen, then you have the ability to raise taxes. Well, that's one model that you can operate under. But the reality of an economy is that it operates in a cyclical fashion where you have peaks and valleys. And what you don't know from a business perspective is how high the peaks are going to be and how low the valleys are going to be and how long the cycle is actually going to be. But what you do is you use economic indicators to gauge where you're at in the cycle. So from a business perspective, we look at things like sales, we look at revenue, we look at margins, we look at utilization, and we look at excess capacity. And we look at those numbers on a regular basis so we can make a determination where we're at in our economic cycle and manage to that. The city, in their model, assuming that revenues are always going to increase, does the same thing with their costs. They rise proportionately to your model that tax revenues always increase. And the reality is revenues have been decreasing. So if you look at the continuum, the further down you get where expenses go up, revenues go down, the more difficult the decisions become and the more lives that you impact. So we've allowed us to get to this point tonight because we've ignored those economic impacts indicators. Ms. Koski, Ms. Ziarko, you've mentioned, we didn't have a crystal ball to see that this was coming, but you didn't necessarily need a crystal ball. It was just a matter of taking a look at the numbers that the city provides, that city administration puts together. In fact, if you look at their graph, you can see declining state revenue started in 2002. If you look at the general fund balance, we started tapping into that in 2004. And then if you look at the tax revenue based upon property taxes, that started declining in 2008. So there were all these factors, all these indicators that came into play that you could have acted upon years ago. 8 years ago they started. That's how we're here tonight, having this discussion. If the decisions were made starting 8 years ago, they would have been a lot easier to make. So where we're at tonight, if we look at 2002, again, when state revenue sharing started falling, employment-related expenses were at $54 million. Today, projected for 2010, they'll be at $73 million. This all the while your revenues are declining. There's been a lot of adversarial type environment here. and some of it's been targeted at the city employees unfairly. Again, they provide good services. There's no question we have good services. And the city employees have been given, or they've given everything they've been asked to give. And the problem isn't at the city employee level. It's at the council level. It's at the administration level, because you haven't asked for enough. If we look at 2008, here's several contracts that were renewed. 5-year contracts going forward, where you have no idea yet where the fall is going to stop in terms of your revenue. 5-year contracts. Here's one, 14.75%. Another one, 5 years, 15.5%. Another one, 14.75%. Here's another one, 14.75. All 5-year contracts in 2008, without having any idea when revenues are going to stop declining. This one's my favorite, and this is indication why we need to have an outside party negotiating. This is our HR director negotiating a contract for the executives on behalf of themselves. So how did we get here? What we have, this is how this council portrays itself: residents, city council, administration, city employees, all on an equal level. The reality is, and all you got to do is point to your own organizational chart, is the residents are on top. This council reports to the residents, and then administration reports into the council. Council, you here are supposed to represent our best interests, right? It's not we're all equal. So when somebody comes to me from a business perspective and brings me a problem, I also ask them to bring me a solution. Because right now, we're not going to tax our way out of this problem. You're going to be back here not next year, probably the year after. Next year's an election year. So we'll wait 2 years and you'll come back and you're going to ask for more. Well, we can't do that. We can't continue to ask for more taxes. We've got to solve the structural problem. So what we have to do is start to focus on the areas of growth. In a down economy like we're in, and all the challenges that we've been presented with, they also provide opportunities. When there's a high rate of unemployment, what you have are people turning to entrepreneurship, starting new businesses. We need to start focusing on how we're going to attract those new businesses. We want every single one of those new businesses coming into the city of Sterling Heights. We want to become the number one, Mr. Baker, when we're talking about metrics, we want to be number one in attracting new businesses. We have to align our city services with the goals that new entrepreneurs need. We need to be enablers to their business. We've got a good concept with the incubator. We need to expand on that incubator concept across the city. We want the city to become an overall incubator for all new businesses. For example, the incubator provides a kitchen cabinet concept, which is a team of people who act as advisors to these new startup businesses. We have a large senior community in Sterling Heights. We can provide that same level of service by tapping into retired engineers, by tapping into retired plant managers, by tapping into former business owners, and use that resource to help attract new businesses. We need to expand upon that concept of new businesses. We also have to get out of this mentality of entitlement. We have to focus on performance versus entitlement. From my perspective, I don't mind paying good salaries. I pay my people well. It's good for our customers, it's good for our business, it's good for retaining people. But we can't hand out raises because somebody's been there for a period of time. We can't hand out raises because they're entitled to 3%. We pay because they've performed, because the business has performed. And that's exactly where we need to be. When we're performing well as a city, as a unit, as we're meeting all of our objectives, which is attracting new businesses,